when the consciousness rises above the enzyme, above the carbohydrate, above the protein, all of which is nonsense. When you are a spiritual being, when you are awoken spiritually, all of your energy, your youth, your vigor comes from living light. It comes from the Merkabah. This is scientifically proved. Anyone who is watching this or listening to me can look up on the computer, on the internet, the Merkabah, and they will find a world that is another planet to their consciousness, because they will be taking a step up the ladder of knowledge. Because here we're not seeking protein and carbohydrates. Here we are seeking living light. And these living foods are filled with energy. It's called Merkabah. And the Merkabah is the light that lives within the vegetables, within the wheatgrass, within the living foods. And when you create energy soups and you eat sprouts, they contain life. And it goes way beyond enzymes. What we hear a lot on YouTube is you've got to have your enzymes, you've got to have your greens, you've got to have raw. Anything that's heated above a certain temperature is ruined. But what they're completely missing is that the actual curative effect of the raw foods or the living foods is far beyond the enzymes, the chlorophyll, and the fact that it has not been heated and that it is living, but actually because it contains the Merkabah light, the light aura light of the plant. And even when the vegetable or the fruit has been cut from the tree, this light vibrates and remains alive for a very, very long time. And when we place that into the high-speed blender, or we eat that as a whole food, that enters the body, and the body actually digests this Merkabah energy not through the stomach. The stomach digests the sugars. The stomach digests the carbohydrates to be used for energy, for yoga, for cycling, for sports, of course. But the body has the blue corona, which is a lining of blue light that is just underneath the auric field. And the auric field extends out from the body. It's different with different people, up to 3 feet for some people. And I've seen some lamas and holy men in India and Nepal and Sri Lanka, where their auric fields actually would extend almost 5-6 feet from their bodies. There are Essene scrolls that speak that the auric field of Jesus extended over 6 feet from his body. So that is Merkabah light. And that exists within the stomach lining. There is a Merkabah that runs down the esophagus and through the intestinal tract, through the mouth and out through the anus. And that is a complete organ, a complete passageway. It's like a stargate where light passes through. A energy transference. And if you look at it through the high spiritual and the high mystical, what enters into the stargate and what exits the stargate, when it's living light, it has a curative and healing effect on the body. So this is why we have people who remove themselves from eating food that is dead and they move into living food, and they have enormous curative effects on their bodies. They go into remission from cancers. They reverse fibromyalgia. They reverse migraine headaches. It goes on and on, the curative effect. So what I see in the raw food planet, if you want to call it that, in the community, is the awareness at this time is very much on longevity, living a long time and living healthy and comfortable and having energy and endurance for sports nutrition. But I see very little knowledge out there that is very commonplace in the ashrams and in the great monasteries and practiced by the monks and the swamis and shris and sages, that the energy from these foods vitalize the electrical body, the electrical system of the aura. And without the aura being in a place of high energy, the immune system is dead. So this is an energy, the Chinese call it qi, the Asians call it qi. So the practices such as qigong and yoga work with the qi in the body, but so does nutrition, and it's a very, very important part of health, and it's very seldom mentioned.
So in merging the spiritual aspects of the raw food movement, how do we work with siddhis and the raw food movement, or just the spiritual aspects completely with the raw food movement, so we're not living superfluously, not talking about chakras and not even know what we're talking about, but rather really integrating it in our everyday life to enhance our mystical selves?
Yes, absolutely. When we speak of siddhis powers, we are speaking of bringing nutrition into the body, but going to a higher level of consciousness than longevity and sports endurance. We are talking about moving our consciousness to a higher level. And this isn't done through detoxifying the body. That is not going to arise your spiritual being. Detoxifying the body is a physical action. What we are speaking of here when we speak of siddhis is a mystical reaction. And that mystical reaction occurs when the body has been detoxified and the body has been placed on nourishing itself with Merkabah, because we are Merkabah beings. We are spiritual beings, and we have spiritual powers. And the true longevity comes when we reach this level of consciousness, where we nourish the body with light, with living light, with Merkabah. In India, there are sadhus and holy men who are over 200 years old. There's one who is alive right now at this time in Bangalore who is 251 years old, and he is still teaching yoga. He is not in a wheelchair or walking with a walker as we see in the Western world, but he is not nourishing his body with death.
So the living foods, Sri, have everything to do with the Merkabah.
Absolutely.
And why we choose living foods. Could you maybe expand on that?
Absolutely. The reason that when people speak of longevity in the West, they're shooting for maybe 90 years old or 100 years old with a quality of life and not having dementia or being in a nursing home, incapacitated and incontinent. This is completely... there are countries where there are men who marry at 115 and have children, and they have grandchildren, and they have enormous amounts of vitality and vigor and stamina. And these men are bricklayers, and they're 115 years old. And what we see here in the West with the way people are eating dead food and food filled with artificial hormones and growth hormones that destroy the immune system, the thymus gland, and do not feed the physical body with the electrical light, the Merkabah, the high siddhis that is necessary. Siddhis is mystical energy that comes from the plant. This is what the Essenes knew thousands of years ago. 3,000 years before the birth of Jesus, the Essenes were vegetarians. They were raw foodists. And the reason that they were raw foodists is because they knew, they had the knowledge. The knowledge had not been squashed by social consciousness at that point. But they had this knowledge that by feeding the body light, by placing, they were seeking not the fruit, the vegetable, the carbohydrate, the protein. They were not worried about how much protein they ingested. They were not worried about if they had enough carbohydrates to do their 10-mile run. Bioelectrical energy that gives the cancer cell its life, because the cancer cell depends on a body that has very low amounts of Merkabah to survive. It's a parasite. It's a yeast. Cancer is a parasite. And when this parasite goes after its nutrition, which is cells in the body which lack the living light, the mystical light of the Merkabah, the cancer grows, takes over the body, and the person dies. But when the person replenishes their body, more so than detoxifying the body to prevent cancer or to cure cancer, doing an enema to cure cancer is a very physical thing. It's a very sophomoric consciousness. There is a higher consciousness than this. And as a Sri, a Swami, we are trained in mystical school, in ashram, if you wish, in your understanding. Years upon years of training. I have traveled all over the world, and I have seen these communities of people that are over 100 years old. Their longevity does not come from carbohydrates and protein. They do not worry about how much protein they have or how much carbohydrates they have or how much sugar they have for their energy. They are focused on the living light within the food because they have the knowledge of their ancestors. And when we have the knowledge of our ancestors and we enter into the stargate of the mouth through the digestive system, into the Merkabic energy, the living light that is found in a red bell pepper, that is found in a banana, that is found in wheatgrass juice or kale. This living light, which is what makes it living food, this living light is what kills illness in the body. Degenerative disease is very different from an injury where one cuts their arm and they need to have medical attention immediately to stop bleeding. Degenerative disease is the body dying. The body is degenerating. It is decomposing. There is a mechanism in the body that is a high spiritual level of consciousness. And this mechanism, when we eat death, when we eat processed foods, foods that are dead, it triggers within the cell an internal knowledge that is on a spiritual level, not on an intellectual level. And that tells the cell to die. And that is where cancer becomes. That is where degenerative neurological conditions come. And when these fibromyalgias, cancers, tumors, when they come, they are parasites that feed on death, on cells that do not have the electrical energy within them. So when we place the Merkabic energy, as the Essenes knew, into our bodies through nutrition, this is how we are freed from disease. We are not curing disease. We are not killing disease. We are actually rising above the state of disease vibrationally. And when we are vibrating and oscillating at a higher vibration than disease, disease cannot be present in the body. And this is the secret to the sages and the sadhus and the holy men who live to be 200 and more years old. And the people that you find in the northern countries, the Nordic countries, for instance, that live to be over 100 years old and are married and have children. These men carry bricks and they walk miles and they walk up hills. They don't have walkers. They have sandals and they walk barefoot. Their feet are on the ground. They're grounded and they feel the energy of the ground. The body is in communication with the earth. The feet are not separated from the ground by shoes and rubber, which is toxic to the body because the feet perspire and the heat activates the chemicals in the shoes. All of this is missing. So when you have these things missing, but you have nutrition that enters the body that is of a high consciousness of light of Merkabah, you have a higher vibratory frequency of the body and of the electrical body. And you have an absence of disease. There is illness in another person. Just like if you take a cancer patient and put them in a swimming pool with a dolphin, and you put 3 people in that pool that do not have cancer, the dolphin will swim to the person with cancer and hover around that person. There are countries that use dolphins to diagnose cancer. Not MRI machines, which are toxic with radiation that cause cancer. You see, the culture is sick. The culture is sick in the way that it is focused on physicality, protein, carbohydrate, sugar. It is not focused on the high spiritual, mystical, electrical Merkabah energies, which brings us into a higher consciousness as human beings. And you can't have a YouTube person beginning talking about the Merkabah when they've never been in an ashram and they've never practiced the disciplines, and they have no idea what they're talking about. They could hurt and harm people. This is what the Swami, the Sri is for, what we receive this training for. I am a raw foodist. I am a fruitarian, and I am a person who does not intake any animal. Eat vegetarian. No suffering animal, no juice or meat or byproducts enter my body. Only Merkabah, only living light. I probably eat more kale in one day than the average American town. And that is the reason that I see auric fields. I can perform the healing work that I do. I am in communication with what you call the dead. They're not dead. They're in a different state of consciousness. And they're all around me. I communicate with those loved ones of people who come into my classroom. I give messages. But I'm not the television guy who gives messages from the dead relative. I give messages from spirit guides who have volunteered, volunteer souls, who have come to assist a person, an entity, perhaps you that's watching this video, through this lifetime. These souls come and volunteer to assist us. And if we are so deadened with fluoride and drugs and antibiotics and antidepressants and pain medications and all of these pills and growth hormones in our food and eating dead food, we lose our ability to communicate with them, to feel them. We all have this ability. But it's beyond detoxification. Detoxification is done in nursery school. What I'm speaking of here is high university of spiritual consciousness.
Thank you. And so we move into consciousness simply by preparing ourselves, by not participating, let's say, by not participating in the tormenting, by not participating in doing that, by not participating, by completely being in opposition of it. We begin to do that.
Even being in opposition, I see in the vegan community, opposition to the usage of animals and cruelty to animals. Even the opposition is anti-consciousness, anti-higher consciousness. Opposition means conflict.
Yes. Division.
Division. To be without division, one moves up into the higher consciousness, and this higher consciousness is reached. It's reached first through nutrition. That higher consciousness is reached. Then through meditation and prayer. And then through awareness of the self. One must be able to heal the self before they can say they are a healer and heal others. You cannot heal others when you are so sick that you can hardly get out of bed in the morning. And being in conflict and angry at people who eat meat or people who abuse animals, you are in conflict. You are sick. You are consciously sick, mystically ill. Conflict and enlightenment does not mix. Enlightenment and spirituality does not happen where there is conflict. It is in harmony. Harmony with nature. Harmony with the electrical universe, the electrical world. And that first comes to you through your nutrition. And when it comes in through your nutrition, then there is the possibility to move to the higher levels of consciousness where the very conflict that these vegetarians have with people who eat meat or abuse animals becomes repulsive to them. When the very need to have an argument disappears from you, and you see it disappearing little by little, the need to fight back disappears little by little. That is your affirmation, your sign that you are moving up in consciousness. So when we see the vegan who is non-confrontive, who does not feel the need to put up a fight with the factory farmers, with the meat eaters, with those who are not like them, you have a vegan who is reaching a higher state of consciousness. And that is a vegan who will not become ill with degenerative disease and cancer. It is not the vegan who is eating the perfect vegan diet, but who is fighting with other vegetarians or in conflict with other people over their practices. Other people live in another world. They live in another consciousness. We must live in our consciousness, and it must be a high consciousness of harmony. And that only comes in the higher states of mysticism. And that is what I teach. That is what I am here for. It is the reason I breathe, and it is the only reason I am here. I have spent half my life in the disciplines of ashram. I have not read books. I have practiced disciplines. Throw your books away. They are repetitious, and the moment a word or sentence or paragraph is written down, it has become antiquated. Consciousness does not stay still on a page. Consciousness evolves. So we must be, when we are in our learning process, we must be in that state of constantly evolving.
Higher consciousness makes us alert. We're alert. And you must be alert to practice the mysticisms of which you speak. And you then, you're the observer then. You're not in conflict, as you're saying.
Absolutely.
This is what, that is coming to me from what you're saying, Sri, is that you really do move beyond in consciousness and above in consciousness, but you're completely aware. There isn't a past or a future. That is only in a lack of higher consciousness. That is only in something that grounds
in
you
the
to these
lower
oppositions.
physical consciousnesses, we think in the terms of past and future. How the past will affect the future, and how we will be in the future, and how we will be safe or be taken care of in the future. That is a lower consciousness. It is not an evolved consciousness. The evolved consciousness knows that in this moment, by living in this moment, not in the past, not what has occurred to us in the past, or been done to us in the past, or worry about how we will be in the future, we will be safe, we will have longevity or health in the future. That is lower consciousness. The entity, the person who lives in this moment, they have the manifesting power that everything is in this moment. There is no past or future, so they are a mystical being. Take a high mystical priest or sadhu, a sage, with great healing power, and have this person who can remove blindness from a person, who can remove tumors from a body of a person simply by waving the hand, or even just the thought, or being near the mystical sadhu who reverses disease in your body with his vibrational frequency being so high. Place him on the SAD diet, the standard American diet, for 1 year. Have him drink fluoridated water. Have him take pharmaceuticals every time he has an ache or pain. And that shaman will be rendered impotent in his energy. That shaman will no longer be able to see into the other worlds, into the other dimensional frequencies. That is what is occurring with the indigo children. That is what is occurring with most of what I call the raw food starseed nation. We are being medicated and our thoughts are being controlled. The government is trying to keep us down in the consciousness of conflict with each other. This is where you see all the fighting amongst vegans. We are all heading in one same direction, and that direction is compassion. But we are not compassionate with each other, so there is no symbiosis. So the bridge to the higher consciousness cannot be bridged. And this is what the lamas and the shris, as myself, travel the world so that we can bring this awareness to people. And when this awareness is tasted, something happens in the person. They are never the same. They are never the same.
Presence.
Presence.
Just your presence, Shri. Just
presence in this moment.
Yes. Affects everyone who's watching,
Yes.
who's listening, who's sitting,
Yes.
who's around, who's in the energy of it. And
Yes.
it's meant to be. It's meant to be if we can hear it, if we can see it. And therefore we must be it.
Indeed.
I'm a little bit at a loss because I'm taking in everything that you're saying, and it's so contrary to the world we've been living in. It's so contrary to that because we've been inundated.
As a Shri, I will close by saying this. It's been a long day, and you all want to go home. So I'm going to close, and I'm going to say this. We are all vegans in this room. We're all raw foodists. The goal is not to be this kind of vegan or that kind of vegan or this kind of vegetarian or that kind of vegetarian. One is not right, the other is not wrong. It doesn't matter if you're a fruitarian or it does not matter where. What matters is that your goal is compassion. And the goal of compassion cannot be reached if the vegetarians, the vegans, the fruitarians are fighting amongst themselves. There is conflict amongst themselves as to this one is wrong, that one is wrong. This one is right, this one is wrong. You see, that is the lower consciousness that I see this movement is imprisoned, is in bondage within at this time. The brightest minds in the vegan world, in the world of the raw foodists that are conscious of the importance of eating the raw food, of living food, they are in bondage to conflict. And that is the next level of consciousness where this vegan is here to bridge you. Because I am not here to teach you about kale and how to make a smoothie. I am not here to teach you how many bananas to eat to be able to run 50 miles in today's day. I am here to teach you how to take your raw vegan body and to bring it to a higher state of consciousness where you are a self-healing machine and you have the ability to heal others and the ability to have your siddhis powers come to the forefront in your life. Your mystical powers. Siddhis powers mean mystical powers. Some will call them magical powers. Of lower consciousness, we'll call it magical powers. It's not magical powers. It's our birthright. And when we are intact electrically, we are electrical beings through nutrition and through compassion. And we are not in a state of confrontation with each other, in turmoil, in a fight with each other. When we are symbiotic in energy, in higher consciousness, that is where we become. We are gods. And that's very frightening for the lower consciousness to hear, because it triggers the ego into confrontation. And that is where I'm going to close on this evening. Namaste, and blessings to you.